Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's live webinar feedback loop for the Tweed Alternative to ED Safe Space co-design process. My name is Bronwyn Edwards, CEO of Roses in the Ocean. I've been very privileged to be able to be one of the co-design facilitators for this process with Tweed. So I'm just going to hand over to Lindy to kick us off and we'll get underway. Over to you, Lindy.
Thanks, Bonnie. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindy Zillman. I'm here as part of the co-design from Roses in the Ocean for Alternatives to Emergency Department. And first of all, welcome everyone from me, and I look forward to sharing with you the feedback loop that we have for you today and continuing with this process. Before we start, what I'd like to do is give our acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the lands which we meet today, and where, in particular, where the alternatives to ED for Tweed and Lismore will be located, which will be in the Bundjalung Nation area, or the lands of the Bundjalung people. And so we acknowledge the traditional owners past, present and emerging, and pay also special recognition to the contribution that they make to this co-design and, you know, the work that we all do and learn from each other in relation to preventing suicide within our communities. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge those of us in attendance or watching this webinar today and who've been part of the co-design process with a lived experience. And we appreciate that everyone's lived experience is unique and valuable, and the contribution of people with lived experience, including, of course, the health professionals that have contributed to this co-design. We know and appreciate that lived experience can make a tremendous difference to the changes that may come along as we move forward. Thanks, Bronnie.
So just to orientate everybody to what's happened to date and where we're at, we started the process with providing you all with an orientation webinar and information pack, copies of the New South Wales Ministry of Health statewide requirements for both the alternative to ED process, the safe spaces, and also for the SP, the suicide prevention peer workforce, and the essential training and support that's to be provided to them. If you need to, if you're just joining this for the first time, please do go to our Roses in the Ocean website, look under the sector tab and you'll find New South Wales Ministry of Health initiatives. Scroll down and you'll find the landing page, the link to the landing page for the Tweed area. You can access all of those documents there, and I really encourage you to do so if you haven't already. So then we embarked on our focus conversations in small groups of up to 3 people. We had focus group conversations with lived experience people and also with health professionals. We then moved into a combined session, a group session of lived experience people coming together. At that stage, we had a feedback loop. Now, the actual diagram to the left on this slide is what the typical co-design process actually looks like. But for the Tweed, we were asked to do a bit of an accelerated process because of the need and urgency to open doors. So we had the lived experience group came together for about 4 hours. We then provided a feedback loop and webinar to you all, received feedback from that, which fed into a group session with the health professionals, which was led by Amy from your LHD and supported by Lindy from Roses in the Ocean. And then we came together for a combined session, which was session 3. And here we are now providing a feedback loop to you. So the only thing that's really not been included in this process is that extra feedback loop, live webinar and what have you. Now, the purpose of today's session is actually to gather broader insight regarding the process from joint co-design and to gather final suggestions to inform the final service model. And that will occur through the survey that will be available on our website along with the recording of this webinar by this afternoon. We would ask you to please circulate that as widely as you can, because we really do want to hear from more people than just those that have attended the actual session. So we really do want you to push that out through your own networks, be they personal networks out to other people with lived experience or through your work. That would be great. Thank you. So now, findings from the feedback loop 1. We share this with you because those of you with the lived experience who've been participating hadn't seen a lot of this, hadn't seen the feedback from that initial webinar and the survey before it went into the health professional group. If anyone's online at the moment who's been in that combined session, you have seen this content, but for those who aren't, this is a chance to update yourselves. So we asked the question, do the slides presented accurately reflect your experiences and needs that we teased out through those focus conversations? And we're not going to read everything verbatim, because you will see these slides on our website. They're part of the survey, and you can have a look at this webinar again. But essentially, people did just ask us to add some additional comments into those various touch points that we talked about as someone was seeking support and going through that ED process, really wanting to make sure that that we had captured all of those emotions and feelings and needs that went into that. There's a couple of things here just to highlight a couple of things in terms of, there were some issues, some words that they just wanted to really reiterate around in that treatment step, being about being treated unkindly and dismissively like a bad person instead of a person in need. And that the repeated sentiment of that the system was actually working against people who are needing to be supported by it. Feelings of being dismissed and rejected when they're waiting in ED, and feeling quite overwhelmed, and actually commenting that the process of going through that actually escalated their level of distress. In terms of the draft values and principles, now, as we talked about when we were in the session with the lived experience people, we've started this process, but values and principles take time, and particularly principles, they really take time to wordsmith. I think you've done an amazing job getting to where you are in the period of time that we actually had online together. But there was one comment here on the last survey that number 2 still needs a little bit of work. Otherwise, they're looking good. We'll show you those in a few slides' time. So which of these ideas are most important? So this was in the survey. We presented you with all the different needs that people had highlighted for people who are in distress, and needing to look at how would the safe space actually meet those needs. So we asked people to comment about which ones were most important. Comments like well-informed staff with good people skills, intuitive and there to intuitive and present to listen to any visitors to the centre. Safety to both staff and visitors needs to be strictly considered. So we've had some good conversation around that in the combined session, and about how do we ensure that guests of the safe space and staff are safe, both physically and psychologically. For safety, quiet spaces, well distanced from the entry, clear protocols for immediate security presence when and only when a disturbance happens. So perhaps an in-pocket panic button was one of the suggestions. Comments on the hours about, ideally we'd love these places to be open 24/7. It should cover outside of business hours, 5 p.m. till 8 a.m. every weekday and all weekends. However, there was that acknowledgement that they realised that the resourcing and the FTE available at the time of the safe spaces opening are not going to enable a 24/7 service. So therefore, people suggesting an 8 p.m. till midnight, Sunday to Thursday, and midday to midnight weekend afternoon. So that will be something that as a group of people who are passionately interested in seeing this happen in community and making it work, some further conversations with the LHD will be really helpful around some of those opening hours. Family members, carers should be able to access support and have the ability to reach out to the centre or the safe space for information if they have someone that they're concerned about. So just raising that point that there is a need and an opportunity for the safe space to be providing support for carers, significant others, support people, whoever they are. Continuing on, the suicide prevention outreach team and safe space should be in close communication, able to share information, perhaps even co-locate and share staff, connect with other local services there. Families and carers and friends need to know the person is safe and secure, and hence contact with an allocated loved one is encouraged. When someone first presents, the person who's welcoming them should offer their name before inquiring of the guest of their first name, but it should not be required. It's that really just welcome, warm welcome, welcome into our place, you're a guest here. As for when more details should be sought, this person commenting would like to build on a practice taught and assist, where in that model, the helper doesn't make any requests of the person in need until that person has reached a turning point and decided to let the helper help him keep him or her safe. Of course, there are exceptions, but I expect in most of it, most if not all of these scenarios, it will be appropriate that the person is sent to ED and told what is going on in a clear and calm way. So, you can see there's still there are broad opinions around what the safe space is for. There are others who absolutely acknowledge that the peer workers can vary with the exceptional training that they're going to be receiving through the essential training that the ministry has outlined, that they will be able to really very competently support people in distress. But of course, if people are wanting to go to ED, needing to go to ED, that there are some good protocols for that connection to be made for that person. So what's been agreed so far? These are the different elements that we've been looking at throughout the whole process. Looked at values of the safe space, where it would be located, how will people connect in and out of it, who's going to deliver the support, how are the suicide prevention peer workforce going to be trained with their skills developed over time and supported. What's the actual model look like? What support will people receive at the safe space? What does it look like, feel like? What's the physical environment and the accessibility like? And the whole governance issue, overarching governance of the safe space, and who will be involved in overseeing that and operational aspects of the safe space. So when we looked at values together, you'll see on the left-hand side there are some values that were pulled together from a very large co-design day that the Ministry of Health held back in November of last year as a guide. Here in Tweed, to date, these are the values that have been highlighted at this point in time: justice, a safe and respectful culture, inclusion and compassion. And as I said, as a group, I really hope that you continue to come together, because co-design is absolutely that iterative process. Come together and continue to be working on these values and principles and other areas of the service model, of course. The principles of the safe space in Tweed so far. Number one, we create a space where we sit alongside you without judgment and you can be heard. Number two, we honour individuals in their moment and empower each other to seek connection and support. Three, we act with love, we strive for peace, and we are here to help. Four, our door is open to support your needs, choices, and own journey. Five, we strive to uphold your self-determination and dignity. So, after the feedback loop, we were then able to pull everything that we'd heard from the focus group conversations, the lived experience group conversation session, and then the feedback loop, and we put everything into a traffic light system where we could show people where the alignment was, where further discussion was required, and if there was anything actually out of scope. And the alignment that we're talking about here is threefold. It's between the people with lived experience of suicide from your region, the health professionals within your region, and the Ministry of Health statewide requirements. What we've then also done is these have been updated after the final session that we had with a combined session of lived experience and health professionals. So Lindy and I are now just going to take you through these. We'll just alternate slide each because I'm sure you're getting tired of my voice, and we'll take you through the different aspects and where things sit at this point in time. So location of a safe space. The statewide requirements say that it can be located on or off hospital grounds. It needs to be within close proximity to the emergency department if it is off hospital grounds, so that people who do want to go to the ED, it's not too far. It's not asking them to travel a long distance. It needs to represent a genuine alternative, and that, you know, the LHD is the people who are responsible for finding it. Where we're at the moment, there's really nice alignment between being off hospital grounds, location to close to transport, close proximity to ED. People are happy, seem to be happy enough if it has to be on hospital grounds, just the fact that it's not in the ED, and ideally that it's in a different part of the hospital grounds. Where we're at as of the combined session this week, Amy shared with us from the LHD that it is proving incredibly difficult to find real estate in Tweed. They have really been looking at, exhaustively looking at possible locations. There are some particular centres that are being considered at the moment, and maybe some co-location opportunities. So you'll have to stay tuned around where the actual location will be. But rest assured, the LHD are working incredibly hard to try and find a really suitable space that's going to match everything that's come out of this co-design process in terms of what people are looking for. Over to you, Lindy.
Okay, so if you have a look at the next area that we've been exploring, it's the connection pathways to the safe space. So you can see again down the left-hand side of the slide are the requirements or essential elements from the Ministry of Health in relation to no requirements for people to present to ED in order to access the alternative to ED. The guests are not required to meet any assessments, complete any assessments, or meet eligibility requirements. There's a no wrong door approach with the service, and the service is to be promoted to the local community so that people are aware of the services and what it can provide. So from the lived experience perspective, you can see there that there are things like people are treated like guests when they arrive, so that first and initial connection is that they are welcomed and not assessed. Peer workers to meet people perhaps at ED and to talk them or help them to the safe space. This is an area, anything in the amber colour or orange colour is obviously things that are going to still need to be discussed and talked about, but they're not in opposition, obviously, with the New South Wales Ministry of Health essential elements. The other thing, asking people to provide their details upon entering the space could be a barrier, and that's going to need, I think, to be teased out in order to, you know, with consideration to things as simple as, you know, occupational health and safety requirements, but the way that that's being done. Open door is important, but also mindful of you know, the safety issues again, and safety keeps coming up as something that is really important and needs to be further teased out. But as Bronnie and I both said, the areas in green there are in alignment with the Ministry of Health requirements. With regarding, you can see a lot of green there as well from the health professionals' perspective. Protocols and relationships, providers being able to call ahead to bring someone to the space, so there's that communication, those links with different services, being able to suggest the alternative to ED as a space for people who may need it, and the importance of being able to get that information out. The couple of little areas there that need more work, staff are able to know who is in the space at the same time. And again, that goes back to I think more of safety concerns, just making sure, but then not allowing or not making the guest feel that they're being monitored and they're not free to come and go as they choose. There was some concern that the service will be overutilised by people who aren't suicidal with no obvious eligibility criteria. And this was really feedback in relation to and with consideration to the number of homelessness in Tweed, and in particular youth homelessness, that the service doesn't become a place or a drop-in centre for people who don't have the eligibility criteria of it being a space to feel safe when someone is in suicide crisis or needs support. Ronnie?
Yeah, thanks, Lindy. And I just want to make another comment around that concern, in the sense that when you look at the statewide requirements from the ministry, it is to be a no wrong door. So it's not just a space for people in crisis. We see safe spaces in other parts of the world, and indeed in Melbourne, where it's been running for almost a couple of years now. People utilise these spaces sometimes on a regular basis as a place where they can go, that they can feel safe and relax for a couple of hours whenever it's open. And that in itself is preventing them from becoming to a point where they are in crisis. So this conversation has come up quite a lot in this region. Clearly there is concern around the capacity of this space and what size the location is going to be able to be found, the staffing that's available, and how will you manage if a lot of people want to utilise this space. And we've talked about the options of, will people consider a volunteer workforce to help supplement the FTE, suicide prevention peer workers. Very difficult if it's a no wrong door approach to say, well, we're full, you can't come in. So that is something that together as a group and with the LHD, you really are going to need to have just some further conversation together to work out how do you honour the values and principles that you've identified with in that scenario. How do you honour the statewide requirements? The next slide is looking at those outward connections. And look, once again, lots of green. Stakeholders within your region are really very much on the same page, which is really fabulous to see. There's that collective ownership around what's coming out of this process, which is great. If I just look at those things in orange, guests can stay as long or as little as they want to be there. Now, the reason that's in orange, it comes back to that point that we were just talking about before, this concern around capacity, I suppose. So obviously a no wrong door and being person-centred and being, a place where people have that self-determination, that they can choose, they're free to come and go and choose to as long as they stay. It's in orange there just because there's still that concern amongst some around how do we do this. And I think once you identify where the location is, that might help to clarify some of this thinking. There's another piece there saying need for a psychologist in the space. That's in orange because this is, has been, the requirement is that it's a completely non-clinical space and it is peer, suicide prevention peer workers that are in the space. A linkage with suicide prevention outreach teams, that's absolutely on the cards, and it's completely up to you and the LHD. Certainly other LHDs are really looking at how the SPOT teams and the safe spaces can work closely together. And if the SPOT teams in essence can even provide that additional layer of support if somebody within that safe space does want some clinical support, then they could actually have a peer walk them around to where the SPOT team is located. And good connections with the ED in case that is also an avenue that the guest is looking for. So all in all, I think you're in a really good place around these outward connections.
Okay, so the next area that we've been talking about is the service model. And this really, again, I'm going to start with the essential elements. So from the Ministry of Health, we have things like clinical services are not provided in the safe space, and what's delivered there must be non-clinical, focus on responding to psychosocial reasons for the person's need for support, including loneliness and isolation. Family and friends are involved wherever possible, obviously with consideration to the wishes of the guest. And then people can access information about a wide range of other community-based services so that there's access to information for the person who is using the safe space. So again, heaps of green, which is really encouraging. The ideas that have come up and the contributions and the perspectives that have come up really in alignment with what the Ministry of Health has already identified as being essential. Offers non-clinical, alternative to attending ED, purpose of the space can be very personal, offers allocated, compassionate, trauma-informed space, can be a place to just exist. They don't have to fix or do something. Again, no wrong door approach, options of being on your own or being with a peer worker, and that there's also been suggestions regarding activity areas. So from the health professionals, again, similar, very similar in context to what came through from people with lived experience, nurturing a non-clinical, options to do something, activities, access to resources, a place to just be, and inclusive of carers and support people, which obviously would also, or could also include family and friends. So one of the important things that came out of the health professional focus group with Amy was the real appreciation and real need for a graduated establishment process to ensure the slow and steady build of the model, so that it is when the doors open, it's open, but it's continually evaluated, continually reviewed, and it goes, I think the words were, you know, like taking some baby steps and building as we go, rather than setting up for failure. And I hope I've reflected that accurately from that. But that's what that means, that graduated establishment process. Thanks, Bronnie.
Right. Thanks, Lindy. Okay, in terms of staffing, there's definitely alignment around having suicide prevention peer workers with the lived experience of suicidal crisis, and a diverse range of people engaged as suicide prevention peer workers. So that's very much talking to, trying to, when you recruit your suicide prevention peer workers, and you've got to remember in that first funding, it's 2 FTE suicide prevention peer workers. So it may be, whether that means 4 part-times or 5 part-times, that's up to the LHD to work out. But trying to get a diverse range so that you do have different backgrounds, different experiences there within your peer workforce, to be able to offer a whole range of diversity for the guests. The only thing there in red is the needs a clinician or have a clinician on call. So the needs a clinician within the centre is obviously, it's red, it's out of scope with the ministry's statewide requirements. Having a clinician on call though is absolutely possible. So that's where this speaks back into your governance and the protocols and processes that you end up having as the overall governance for this safe space, is that if a guest wants to speak with a clinician, then the peer workers within that safe space know exactly how to get in touch with somebody and are able to connect them warmly to where that clinician will be and can provide those services off-site. Everything else there, though, is pretty much on page. The only other comment there is around the volunteers, which I'd mentioned earlier. So just that opportunity to be considering a volunteer suicide prevention peer workforce as well to supplement the paid staff.
Okay, workforce development and support. So there's probably looking at it here, you know, maybe there is some further consideration that really hasn't been perhaps teased out as much as it may need to be required. But basically, there is a definite essential element from the Ministry of Health in ongoing training, supervision, mentoring, group reflection, opportunities to support skill development, promote personal recovery and professional growth for suicide prevention peer workers. So training and support as per the Ministry of Health suicide prevention peer workforce guidelines. And I would encourage, if you haven't had a look at those, to have a look at those guidelines in relation to the suicide prevention peer workforce. So from a lived experience, comments, basically a consideration that there is cultural capability training, that cultural capability training in the light of people from diverse backgrounds, and it doesn't become focused on just certain groups or certain types of people. From a co-design, from the health professionals, peer workers trained to effectively manage risk was one of the comments made from health professionals, that recognising that the suicide prevention peer workers are trained effectively to manage risks, and again, it's a safety issue. And trained as peer workers, guidelines supplied by the Ministry of Health is really important.
I'll just add in there, we will change this before it goes onto the survey, if we're able to, although it may. That peer workers trained to effectively manage risk ought to be in green, because it's definitely something that came through from the lived experience people as well. I mean, everybody is wanting to ensure that the SB peer workers are trained in accordance to the requirements, and that they are, you know, really very capable in the role that they'll play. Physical environment and accessibility. The guidance from the Ministry of Health is that accessible outside of business hours, and that it's a welcoming, safe and calm environment, including cultural, spiritual, emotional safety and the provision of trauma-informed care. Lots of alignment. People are very much on the same page in what they want this experience to be like, what it's to look like. We've been through a lot of this in other conversations, but that relaxing, comfortable environment, the different sensory items and access to various activities to do, taking careful consideration of furnishings and decor and what have you, an open outside area as well, space for private conversation if needed, but also spaces where people can gather together and guests can talk to each other. There was conversation around in the outdoor space, you know, even table tennis tables or something like that, and places for some people. Someone mentioned, you know, a boxing bag, where, you know, for some people being very physical is a good way to actually overcome enormous levels of distress. And how do we provide different spaces where different people can access what they need without impacting on other people's needs as well. The only things in orange there are gender-specific rooms, spaces and bathrooms. So we just didn't have a big conversation around that, but it was brought up in the health professional session as something to be in consideration. I think when you look at other areas in terms of it being emotional safety, trauma-informed, that speaks very loudly to those requirements. A place to smoke. Now, this is something in the other LHDs. In fact, in almost every co-design we've been involved in, this comes up, and the need for an outdoor area, so that if people smoke, that they can go outside and smoke, that you're not sort of inhibiting someone from doing that when that might actually be something that they find is something that helps to relax them. And then just the desire to be open 24/7 in the long run. And the potential to leverage the operational costs of a day service and operate the safe space in the after hours. So that, I'm sure, is being considered by the LHD when they're looking at where they can locate the space. This final one around governance, I think I'll just comment here. The governance is to a large degree up to the LHD, because they're going to be running these services. So the things that have been mentioned here are things like, what are the governance arrangements going to be between safe spaces and SPOT teams? Just some uncertainty still in terms of record keeping, non-clinical records. You know, a lot of people are not wanting to have to ask people for information, but there's just some clarity that's required in terms of what will the LHD need to report back to the ministry. And if there is information that needs to be collected, how can it then be done in a trauma-informed way, in a non-clinical way, in a supportive way? The security issue is here raised yet again. So clearly this is something that's really important. It's about finding a solution that allows the staff confidence and access to additional support if there arises a situation where there is physical or psychological safety to staff or guests, but how do you do that such that you're also being very trauma informed? So the governance will continue the work in the background with the LHD, and they'll be able to come back to you in future weeks and what have you in progress in that space. So then we had the joint session. We came together earlier this week with lived experience people and health professionals, and we actually ran through 3 different scenarios. Now, the reason we do this is the scenarios are all different. They all prompt us to think about various situations that the safe space, the staff within the safe space, the guests within the safe space will experience. And it's an opportunity to really sense check them against the values and principles, against the ministry's statewide requirements, to say how will we support this person in this situation. So what we do is break up into small groups to discuss this, come together as a whole group. These are a really important thing for you to be circulating through your other networks. Do that to have the survey circulated so that we can get more people to be commenting on all of this. The first one I'll hand across to you, Lindy. Lindy will read the scenario and some prompt questions and then share with you what the group came up with.
Okay, so the first scenario that we looked at it goes like this. Chantel is a 17-year-old teenage girl who arrives at the safe space experiencing suicidal thoughts. It is the first time she has ever reached out for help, and she's frightened by what she is experiencing. She doesn't know where else to go. It is 8 p.m, just 30 minutes before closing time. So you can imagine that there are a number of issues that were raised there as far as it's closing time. It's the first time she's ever reached out. She's obviously frightened, doesn't know what else to do. So they were the sort of immediate issues that were identified. And the health professionals that came up with some responses.
Sorry, Lindy. This was the combined session, so it's.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I really apologise for that. Sorry.
That's all right.
So the responses were from the combined lived experience and health professionals were things like, there needs to be an opportunity to come back at a later date to unpack the needs more broadly. So the opportunity that they're not just going to be told, no, I'm sorry, we're closing at 8:30. I can't do anything about it. But there is that reaching out, that there is an opportunity to come back and look further at what this young girl may need. Integration and collaboration with the suicide prevention outreach team, there it is again. Priority should be able to keep her safe and meet her immediate needs. So then it was like, well, what do we do now? Should be encouraged to re-engage at a later time to explore longer term needs or link with appropriate supports. Important for peer workers to know about the full range of support services available in the community. So there's those connections with the community and why that is down as being one of the important areas that we've been looking at. Considerations need to be made around the protocols of the safe space so staff understand what is expected in similar situations. Safety for the peer worker and individual should be prioritised. An importance of attempting to connect back to the family and natural support was also raised. Are there any other supports that Chantel may be able to, that the peer worker may be able to help her get in contact with? A strong feeling that the safe space should avoid any situation where someone must leave due to a closing time. So again, it goes back to really looking at, in practicalities, this could be a real scenario that happens at the safe space. Have we got the protocols and have we got the procedures in place in order to be able to address and support this person appropriately? Thanks, Bronnie.
Thanks, Lindy. All right, now scenario 2. Leanne walks into the safe space and says hi to the peer worker who greets her. She knows the safe space well, having visited for a few weeks in a row. She says it is a place where she can relax for a while, knowing that she's safe from self-harming while she's here, and it helps her get through her week. Tonight, she asks if there's anything different she can do while she's at the safe space. So the point of this scenario is to actually raise some discussion around the purpose of the safe space. And how can the safe space cater for and continue to support someone who wants to utilise it on a regular basis? What sorts of activities might be available to this person and other guests? That then influences the layout and design of the safe space and what have you. So when we unpacked this with the combined group of people, these were some of their responses. So from it was broken into a few different focus areas in this case. So personal capacity building. So run programs that build skills and self-capacity. Build Leanne's network to help broaden her supports outside of the safe space. So utilise the safe space as this great connector and catalyst to be able to connect people into a broader network. And having the ability to guide, assist and support someone to access a range of other services as well. So building her capacity, if she's going to come regularly, how can we keep building on her ability to support herself and connect in to community in other ways as well. In terms of engagement, just being to creating a space to feel safe and connected, offering her the opportunity to bring interesting activities into the space. You know, if there's something that she particularly loves to do, she might like to bring it with her and just do it while she's in the safe space in a place where she does feel safe and more relaxed. Are her physical, mental and social needs being met? You know, are there other things that the safe space could be doing on any of those levels? Having a range of things on hand, from sensory modulation and self-soothing, you know, other things in conversation with things like puzzles, Sudoku, some form of art. So different things to occupy Leanne, but also be really tapping into those different senses and the different physical and mental and social needs. Listening and connecting. So conducting a brief assessment of the situation via a conversation. And I know when the person who said that, they also clarified that assessment wasn't the right language, but meaning not to do a formal assessment, but just through the peer workers having a really good conversation with Leanne, just trying to see where she's at and what sorts of things she would like to do and what would add value to her time in the safe space. Matching those supports with her personal circumstances and maybe digging deeper a little bit further to see, are there any other underlying reason or causes of the distress that Leanne feels that drives her to self-harm, and can the safe space actually start linking her in with other support services that might be able to help address some of those underlying issues. Identifying why the need is present to continue accessing the safe space and access that need. But overall, absolutely a feeling from the group that if she wants to keep coming, she keeps coming. But how can we continue to add value to that experience for her? Thanks, Lindy.
Okay, so scenario 3, Let's have a look at it. Amanda is a 20-year-old woman with a history of past suicide attempts who comes to the safe space extremely distressed. She says that her life is not worth living, that she has tried everything to stop feeling this way. She tells the SP peer worker that she has been on dozens of different medications, tried therapy for childhood trauma, done everything the psychologist told her. Nothing ever works, her words, and she has run out of options. When the worker asks her if she plans to kill herself, she tells them that she has bought medication off the internet and is just waiting for her mum and dad to leave her alone so she can take it. Her history of previous attempts is known to one of the safe space peer workers who had previously supported her in ED. So again, it's raising a number of issues in relation to this person is obviously contemplating taking her own life. And there are a range of things in relation to confidentiality, what role the previous or the current safe space peer worker has in supporting her, seeing that she knows her or has known of her and worked with her previously. And this is what this particular group came up with. So the important things that were identified were that there was a need to engage with the guest or the individual themselves about risk management and safety planning. Again, safety and risk management are mentioned. Linking the peer worker in to work with Amanda, who should understand what the person needs. Ensure a range of spaces are available, quiet spaces, spaces where being loud is okay. So this brings in the ideas or the considerations of, here she comes, here arrives Amanda, and where do we talk to her? Where do we go to ensure her privacy and her dignity is maintained, and making sure out of that conversation that there are different spaces available for people, you know, to use depending on their level of distress when they come in, or who may arrive, whether it's Leanne who likes to come and do activities and feel supported, or whether it's someone like Amanda. From the health perspective, health professionals' perspective, strong relationships and connections into community and clinical support is required. So those protocols again on how to, first of all, develop the relationships and connections, and then protocols and risk management being important parts of that. Peer workers are highly trained and capable, ensuring that peer workers are highly trained and capable of working with individuals and support people who are experiencing suicidal crisis. Ensuring that the training involves being able to provide support to a person within the safe space without necessarily the need to refer out. Focus on safety planning. Peers need to have advanced skill in doing so. Ensure that the service has backup. For example, people on call in case the service is being overwhelmed. There was discussion around this also in relation to how many guests the safe space can actually cater for at any one time. Need of a range of responses matched to the different needs of different guests and individuals, and the need to establish processes around how to ensure the safety of people experiencing suicidal thoughts to leave the safe space safely. And that was commented in relation to reassuring or being reassured that the peer workers can be reassured that people are leaving the safe space safely, not being turned away or not being obviously left without any support. Thanks, Bronnie.
Thanks, Lindy. I guess just the only other comment I'd make on that is, on that last point, we also talked about the fact that, you know, people leave ED, and we know that internationally we're moving away from, you know, that low, medium, high risk assessment because it simply doesn't work. And, you know, people that have been assessed low in that old sort of categorization have left the EDs and taken their lives, and people classified high don't. And so we absolutely acknowledge that this is a very genuine concern, and particularly a genuine concern of a lot of health professionals. But the conversation we did have around this as a group was, this is real in any service. This is real when people are in hospital even. You know, unfortunately, there are some people who take their lives whilst in care in hospital, tragically. So it's, you know, it speaks to absolutely the fact of having highly trained staff, peer workers who are really well trained and supported, really good governance, good protocols, great connections into additional services, including clinical services, such that whatever that guest is wanting, this is a place that can actually connect them to the care that they need. So just wanted to acknowledge that, because it's a really important discussion that the group held, and yeah, just important to note. Okay, so look, after that, we then, just at the very end of our time together in the combined session, we asked people in small groups to come up with their 5 top non-negotiables for the safe space. And this is what we came up with. So the 2 groups went away on their own, came back as a whole group, and this was the list. So we're really keen for these to be added to through the survey. No personal details on entry. The principle of free to come and free to go, that all staff have a lived experience. Safety, both physical and psychological, is prioritised for staff and guests and documented in processes and protocols. That there's flexibility for the service to evolve over time. They're clear with the boundaries that the service offers. Through training, staff have a broad understanding of the social constructs of mental health. Adequate trauma-informed support provided for guests and peer workers alike. Making sure that lived experience peer workers are employed from the Tweed region, and the space is inclusive of LGBTIQA+, First Nations and CALL as much as possible. And that was reflected, if you remember, 20 minutes or so ago, in terms of recruitment of peer workers and that nice diversity within that staffing group. So next steps from here, this recorded webinar and the feedback loop survey will be up on our website this afternoon. Feedback from this webinar and survey will be gathered over the coming week, and then all of those outputs will be collated, added to what you've seen today, and then the service model development, that then contributes into that service model development. There'll be finalisation of the governance model, the location, the staff recruitment by the LHD. Roses in the Ocean provides a guardianship role just to support that transfer of service model into the actual service delivery. We just play a role in ensuring that the outputs of co-design are actually, they make their way through to service delivery. And then there's a redesign workshop that will occur 3 to 6 months after your doors open, hopefully to include guests who've utilised the safe space and the service, as well as original co-design participants, such that you can start that process of iterative design. And hopefully there's a question in the survey, but really looking to hear from you. What are your ideas of how you can continuously improve this, this service offering in community? You know, what is it? What's the process going to be? Even if it's a casual barbecue once every couple of months, where people can just drop in and share how it's going and what ideas they have, whatever it is that you come up with as a community, such that this can be an ongoing development, which would be fantastic. All right, so because this is our final webinar, this is actually the end of the interaction that we have with you directly at this stage until we come back for the redesign. So we really wanted to thank everyone from the Tweed community who have contributed through the co-design sessions, the feedback loop surveys. It's just so important that your voices are heard, and I iterate to you once again, please, please, please send these links out to your friends and colleagues such that we can have more people contribute to this final phase of co-design. Thank you so much to the lived experience of suicide participants. Thank you to the health professionals, the LHD team, and of course, the New South Wales Ministry of Health for making it possible. So we'll just stop sharing very briefly so we can just come back and and say thank you so much. Thanks for your time. It's been absolutely wonderful working with you all. It's been a privilege, and we really look forward to seeing what comes out of the next sort of feedback from this survey, and just, you know, walking alongside you now as you find your location and open the doors. So thanks so much from me.
Thank you, everyone. I've really appreciated working with you, and I wish you all the very best.